The press drives for the new 2020 Toyota Supra are happening this week, and I wasn't invited. However, since you clicked on this video, you probably already know that there are endless critiques about the Supra, and it's not even out yet. The most common complaints are, Toyota just put a badge on it, but it's actually a BMW. It's just like the BRZ FRS, but it's got a different badge on it. Ooh, it should have had a back seat. It should have a jet fighter cockpit, so it's driver-oriented like the Mark IV. And you've probably seen the Corvette, the C7. Do you guys actually like the interior in that? Because I don't. It should have had a manual. Well, oh yeah, actually, I'd like a manual. Toyota, are you listening? Maybe next year? And my favorite, it should have had a 3JZ. Well, my name is Eric, and you've probably noticed there's a lot of shouldas on that list. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. If you like sports cars, you probably know that I track the Supra and I track other cars like the C7, so hey, consider subscribing. I've also got a ton of content on Instagram I never post here, so that's up on screen too. If you want to check that out, that would be awesome. George of Jalopnk sat down with Tada San recently, and he's the chief engineer of the Toyota Supra, and actually he's worked for Toyota for 20 years, and he's got some answers to the question of why doesn't the Supra have a 2JZ or a 3JZ? We're gonna get into that. Now, as you probably know, Tada San actually helmed up the 86, the GT86 project as well. Like I said, he's been at Toyota for about 20 years, and that project was released to the public in 2013. And if you like the 86, Toyota actually recently confirmed 100% that the new generation of the 86 is actually on target. It is being developed right now. I've got a video on that. It's right over here if you want to check it out. And if you followed that car, and if you remember at the launch of the BRZ FRS, that's what they called it. It was a Scion back then. There was so much criticism lobbied at the engine. In fact, Tada San said he was bombarded with criticism about why did Toyota use a boxer engine from Subaru and not a Toyota engine. So this criticism about the engine, this is not a new thing to Toyota. Toyota is not the only manufacturer to partner with other manufacturers. In fact, it's very common nowadays. Now, most everyone, actually including me, thought that the boxer engine was used because of the low center of gravity, but actually that's not the real reason that Toyota picked it or decided to partner with Subaru. We always wanted the 86 to be a 2+2, and boxer engines are very short. That's a direct quote from Tada San. So it actually boils down to packaging, and what you might not realize about the 86 is that it's certainly not meant to win stoplight drag races. If you live in the middle of the Midwest, maybe that's all you got, and I can totally understand that. There's not a lot of canyons. But what I think the real purpose behind the 86, if we get right down to it, is for driver improvement. It's a relatively low horsepower car. It's 200 horsepower, very lightweight, about 2,800 pounds or so, and it is known for its exemplary handling. And if you like to go to the track, like I do from time to time, it's an excellent driver development vehicle because you can't just power down the straights, exit a corner, and pass somebody. You've actually got to develop your driver's skills because of the lack of power. You've got to figure out how to go around the corners faster, how to brake more efficiently, and overall just improve yourself as a driver. And I think that's the real purpose behind the 86. Now, the Supra has a bit of a different mission, but we'll get to that. But back to the Supra, why doesn't it have a 3JZ or perhaps an updated 2JZ? So there's a couple of reasons. So Toyota wanted the 86 to be a 2+2, in other words, a 4-seater. You can put some little people in the back seat perhaps, but the Supra has a bit of a different mission. This time, instead of making a GT car like the Supra was in the Mark IV, Toyota wanted to make something a lot more athletic, more of a real sports car this time out. So not so much of a grand touring car, and the traditional definition of that is sort of a bigger, heavier, high-powered car that you can take on long road trips. This time out, Toyota, and I guess BMW, set their sights on the Porsche Cayman and the Porsche Boxster as their target cars, the cars they want it to beat. So as you know, those cars are a mid-engine 2-seater only. Toyota started to collaborate with BMW on the new Supra in 2012. It actually wasn't called the Supra initially, but that's when the project started. BMW was set on another convertible, Tada said. Toyota was set on a coupe. We had to have a meeting of minds. BMW admitted that the old Z4 wasn't much of a pure sports car. So the new chassis they've co-developed is about 300 pounds lighter than the last inline-six Z4. And if you've driven the old Z4 or the current one, whatever you want to call it, it's more of a GT car. It's not that great a handling car. It's kind of top heavy. It's got the retractable hardtop, and it's a nice car. It's kind of more luxurious, but it doesn't really fall into the domain of a pure sports car, at least not in my opinion, and not really anybody else that's driven it either. Now, I always thought that the BMW-Toyota partnership was really just about lowering costs, but that's actually not all that it's about. It wasn't just a matter of lowering costs, Tada said. The Supra had to have an inline-six. BMW had a good inline-six. So every generation of the Supra has actually had an inline-six. If you think Porsche, you think of the classic 911. What engine do you think of? You think of a flat-six boxer engine, a horizontally opposed six. If you think of the Corvette is synonymous with a V8. So I think Toyota, in fact they've specifically said it, they wanted to make sure that the new Supra did have an inline-six to maintain the heritage of the Supra brand. Now, a lot of people don't like the fact that it's a BMW, but apparently there are some reasons why they went with BMW, and it's not just cost. It wasn't a matter of lowering costs, at least not entirely, though it did happen. The Supra had to have an inline-six. BMW has a good inline-six. So essentially, Toyota has decided that the inline-six is core to this car's identity. I can't say that I disagree. A lot of people love to hate on the new Supra, and if it didn't have an inline-six and it went with a V8 or something like that, or maybe a four-cylinder turbo, which you actually can get in Japan, and there's been previous Supras with four cylinders, but if they went with that, I think the outcry would have been a lot greater because, again, it's up to Toyota to decide what goes into the car, and they wanted to keep with the heritage. In fact, at one point, they were even seriously considering a mid-engine hybrid. Hello, Acura NSX, anybody? And that didn't turn out all that great for Acura. So I think I can see the decision-making process behind why Toyota decided to go with the 6. So really, we're talking about an issue of packaging, just like the 8.6, where we have a 2+2, and we've got a pretty short engine so we can accommodate that specific vehicle design. So why didn't Toyota just develop their own inline-6 engine? Aside from the Supra, there aren't too many cars in existence now where an inline-6 would be better than the engines we've already built. It's a very difficult engine to package. You lose space for the driver and the passenger. So packaging is one of the reasons why the inline-6 is just not that popular anymore industry-wide. It used to be a much more popular engine form, but at this point, BMW is really the only one that sort of kept the flame going for many, many years. Obviously, Jeep has had one for a long time, but that's sort of a different package entirely, being a Jeep, and Mercedes has come back with a new inline-6 as well. But generally speaking, the world has gone to four-cylinder turbos. But I think here's the real reason and the biggest complaint about the Supra, even though it's not out yet, that I keep hearing from everybody is, why isn't it a pure Toyota sports car? Why does it have to be a partnership? Why does it have to be like the 8.6? Why BMW? Right? I mean, I think that's sort of what it boils down to, and Tada said it would have pushed the development back by 2 to 3 years and probably brought the cost of the car to about $100,000. I know all the fanboys could care less what the car costs. They would love a Supra at $100,000, $150,000. They think it's awesome because they can look at it on Instagram and Facebook and wherever else and talk about the car and go, oh, it's the new Supra, it's awesome, it's $150,000. They can't afford it. I can't afford it. Not that many people can afford a $100,000 car. And when you think about the cars you're competing with at the $100,000 price point for a sports car, it's really Porsche. I mean, those are the guys that make probably the highest volume of sports cars at about $100,000. I could be wrong in that, but clearly Porsche is a major player in that space. Very, very difficult to compete with Porsche. They understand their market down cold. As you probably know, Lexus sells the LC500. It starts at $92,000. It's not hard to get up to the $100,000 mark in that car. yet it weighs over 4,000 pounds, significantly over, and yeah, it's got a relatively high horsepower V8, but this is the Grand Touring car. This is not a handling special. This is not a track special. It's a two-seater that just weighs a ton, and it doesn't really get all that great reviews, and they don't sell that many of them either. They sell a couple hundred a month at best. I think we can all agree that Toyota does not position themselves as an exotic car manufacturer. They are trying to make a car that is somewhat attainable, maybe not affordable, but attainable for people in the middle class. After all, when you think about a loaded Camaro, a loaded Mustang, we are talking about cars in close to the $50,000 range. If you think of a Corvette, that is more than $50,000 base. So there is a market for this car. It's, the Corvette is still seen as an attainable car, so Toyota is positioning themselves in this space. So what I understand from reading interviews with Tada is that he's the kind of engineer who's very specific about what he wants to achieve, and taking an existing Lexus engine, let's say a V8, and dropping it into the Supra probably doesn't meet with his and probably Toyota's ideas of what the Supra should be. Again, we're talking about an inline-six engine. They've always had that throughout the entire lineup, so putting in something different probably just wouldn't really play into that design aesthetic that he's going for. It's going to be a heavier engine. It's going to upset the balance of the car a little bit. So when Jalopnik asked Tada San what his favorite part about the car was, it's actually not what I expected. He said it's the noise. And I got some great noise clips here from Tony Nguyen. Thank you for letting me use your clips. As you know, there's a ton of noise restriction right now on cars in North America and Europe. It's actually pretty difficult to have a factory sounding loud car. So with respect to the noise, Tada said it's almost a miracle. Tada said it may not even be possible in future production cars. And I thought I'd respond to some of the comments on my Toyota versus Corvette comparison. That was a pretty popular video, although not a lot of people actually liked it. Now I did the comparison because neither car is actually out yet, and they are priced roughly in the same price bracket, but I said early on in the video, and I said this very clearly, that it's not an accurate comparison, but I thought it would be fun to do. People didn't seem to like that idea so much. You're a real idiot. It's very clear you're not a Corvette fan. Again, it's clear you hate GM and you shouldn't be making a comparison. Get real, dude. Corvette is the superior car on any platform compared to a stinking Toyota. Alright, so it's pretty clear that you are a huge Corvette fan and you hate Toyota. That's totally fine, but making the assumption that I am not a Corvette fan is ridiculous. I actually love the C8 Corvette. I like the C7 a lot too. I'm actually a huge Corvette fan, and again, they're priced similarly. The base price of the C8 Corvette is probably going to be a little bit higher than a loaded Supra. WTF, why would you even... WTF, why would you compare the two? Corvette is on a completely different level while the Supra is just a boring rebranded Z4. Are you stupid or what? So no, actually it's not a rebranded Z4. If you refer to this video, that hopefully you've just watched, you can see that that is not the case at all. I've got more videos on sports cars. Feel free to click on one of them right over here. I love my Patreons. They are helping to support the channel and helping me get to events and things like that. They're listed right up here. Thank you so much. See you guys in the next video.